I'm curious to know about this whole journey of surrendering. My name literally means strong will. So meaning masculine, carving out, no, just go over it, go through it, go under it, go around it, doesn't matter, just, fulfill my wish has always been my strong suit. It's in my name. And as George has beautifully articulated, it's a sword. It cuts both ways. So I can use it to pulverize obstacles in front of me. At the same time, there's a cost of trying to just making things harder than they need to be. Sometimes, like riding a wave, I don't always have to ride every wave. Sometimes I can actually just look at all the waves that's in front of me and say, all right, this wave is too hard. It takes too much effort to pedal over there. Let me ride this other wave and may experience something even more magical, more surprising. That's part of my lesson that I learned. So I'm curious, in the journey of learning the navigation of the different waves, right? Sometimes you use your will to paddle harder. Sometimes you surrender. So can you share with us, how are you learning to surrender?
Let me ask you a question first so we can do this a little bit.
Sure.
And I'll tell you why I'm asking the question, because I've worked with many war veterans, active duty war veterans, both cancer survivors as well as in the leadership programs. And just the word surrender to a combat veteran has a whole dictionary full of definition behind it. And so I'm curious to you what surrender means for you in this context.
Yeah, no one's ever asked me that question before. What does surrender? Surrender means for me giving up my sovereignty, giving up my agency to something, to something else, not me.
So that's awesome. Wow, what and a potent definition. The hair on my arms is standing up, because that piece of surrendering, giving up your sovereignty. Now, first of all, as a human who recognizes your sovereignty and your agency in any moment might just be like the only thing you have, like the only thing that is certain, if you will, like in a world where impermanence is a natural state. The idea of surrendering or giving up your sovereignty could be so challenging to your sense of existence, to your ego.
To my entire egoic being, correct?
Yeah. And because in a way, sovereignty is part of what defines our ego, our sense of self. And so I want to get back to the original question now. The experience of surrender, how I've embraced the experience of surrender, is really related to that last piece of your definition, to something else. And that, as a man, as a leader, as a teacher, as a father, as a partner, as a friend, I'm not willing to surrender consciously my agency to any other person. Now, I recognize that I do that unconsciously. I do that unconsciously every time I respond to a notification on my phone. I just did it. I just surrendered my agency. Now, but at the same time, I've consciously taken steps. Like, I never have my notifications on my phone, and not just the recent movie that just came out, The Social Dilemma. But I had done that before. Like, I'm not willing to surrender my agency to every other person's impulse on Twitter, for instance. However, I am willing in some certain circumstances, and pretty much every circumstance, to surrender my agency to what I've come to understand to be creation. And people might call that God, depending on your vocabulary, right? Christ consciousness, Jesus, Buddha, Brahma, Allah, whatever word we use, infinite spirit, infinite nature, creation, whatever, however anyone would relate to that entity, that field of energy, that infinite field of possibility, whatever that is, I surrender to that. I submit to that, because I truly believe that my most expressed life as a human being is my humanness surrendering to my spiritual being expressing itself. So, in other words, if I could let my consciousness of my ego, this thing that I think defines me sometimes, this Georgeness, if I surrender that to my spiritness, that often results in a better outcome for me. And it can be scary sometimes. It was scary when I was rocking back and forth with that shaman to trust and to let go. It's scary sometimes taking the stage in front of 1,500 people or whatever, and will I remember everything I want to teach them? I remember everything I want to say. It's scary saying to somebody, my fee for working with me for the year is $100,000, and that is payable in full. And it's scary to look somebody in the eye and say that. And yet, surrendering, and a surrender is also includes not attaching to the outcome. Surrendering includes a preparation that the universe's answer could be no right now. For me, the surrender is a two-part thing. It's trusting that you'll be safe in just surrendering in and of itself will be safe, and trusting that regardless of the outcome, that safety will continue. Which actually bridges to the second experience that I wanted to share that relates to your noble warrior, if I may.
Yeah, please.
You shared with me when we were first getting to know each other that noble warrior to you meant someone who's purposeful, and I think that was, and also willing to lean into discomfort.
Correct.
Which I think is one of the most beautiful definitions of a warrior. When we think of, I'm half Greek and half Italian, and my Greek heritage is Spartan. And so the fascination around the Spartan warrior ethic has always been it's just been in my consciousness since I was a teenager. And then, of course, when the 300 came out and that exploration was just renewed. And the idea of celebrating that a warrior chooses a certain ethic and leans into that ethic no matter what it looks or feels like, even when it's horribly uncomfortable and even when death is certain, right? Because that the warrior has adopted, that's my code. And the reason why that warrior can rely on his brothers in arms, in this case, is because he knows that his brother has accepted that same code. Now, if we take actual mortal conflict out of the equation, then leaning into discomfort becomes possibly a real paradigm shifter for people. And I remember working with a shaman with a medicine called Kambo. It's a frog medicine. It's a medicine that's derived from the secretions of the skin of a Amazonian tree frog, of South American tree frog. Now, what's significant about these secretions is the tree frog has no predators. So literally in its DNA, there is no mechanism for fear. There's no mechanism for, oh, this could kill me. It just doesn't exist because nothing in nature eats this frog. So its secretions being poisonous are somewhat paradoxical. The poison keeps it alive because nothing wants to eat this frog, and yet nothing wants to eat this frog. So the medicine is paradoxical. And in the human system, it's very disruptive. And by that, it causes tremendous nausea, not so much psychedelic effects, but definitely altering states. And I remember being in ceremony with this medicine with a shaman, being in all sorts of discomfort. And part of me, my ego was saying, this isn't as bad as chemotherapy. I can handle this. I can handle this. I can handle this.
Does it feel like chemotherapy, out of curiosity?
For me, the nausea was really bad nausea is really bad nausea. And you just want it to end. And my physical body was in great deal of discomfort. I, really nauseous and very similar to the ayahuasca experience. Wanted to come out of both ends. You know what I mean? And the shaman She was a brilliant teacher and just held brilliant space. She just whispered in my ear, "This is what getting feels." And I remember those words and thinking to myself, okay, maybe I don't want it to end. Not from a masochistic place of, yeah, I want to feel this pain, but rather, oh, if this is what getting well feels like, maybe I want to lean into this and not escape from it. And why I think that's relevant to your warrior metaphor is because the idea of leaning into discomfort, depending on the context, can be quite heroic. Even if it doesn't appear that way to anybody else but you, because your willingness to lean into discomfort in any given moment might be so inspirational to you. I know for me, I was really proud of myself because at any moment I could have asked my body to purge and ended the experience, but I leaned into it. And what I really discovered, even if that was the only thing I was meant to learn about myself from that journey, is that when the chips are down or when the moment comes, I might be willing to lean into it. That gives me a great sense of empowerment. I wasn't in mortal danger. I wasn't in harm's way. My body was physically safe. I was just really uncomfortable and I leaned into it. And so I feel like there's something inspiring about that. It's like not at all to equate, this is not an equivalent. We hold so much admiration for that firefighter who runs into the building. Wait a second, that's totally contrary to your well-being. And you run into the building. That willingness, that firefighter runs into the building because he or she has prepared for that. They've done the work. They've strengthened that muscle. They know the ins and outs and the strategies to protect themselves. So they have the confidence to lean into the discomfort. That is a really important pathway to lay out. That the pathway to courage and greatness is actually, we know the steps. We can build a muscle, we can practice, we can put into place the structures and the strategies to support our being our highest self. We can get the mentorship and the tutelage to learn those skills. We can do all these things ahead of time so that when we're challenged, we can lean into the discomfort.